عَمَّ يَتَسَاءَلُونَ عَنِ النَّبَإِ الْعَظِيمِ الَّذِي هُمْ فِيهِ مُخْتَلِفُونَ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ ثُمَّ كَلَّا سَيَعْلَمُونَ أَلَمْ نَجْعَلِ الْأَرْضَ مِهَادًا وَالْجِبَالَ أَوْتَادًا وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا وَبَنَيْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَّاجًا وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا لِّنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا وَنَبَاتًا وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا لِّنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا وَنَبَاتًا وَجَنَّاتٍ أَلْفَافًا إِنَّ يَوْمَ الْفَصْلِ كَانَ مِيقَاتًا يَوْمَ يُنفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ فَتَأْتُونَ أَفْوَاجًا وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا وَسُيِّرَتِ الْجِبَالُ فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا إِنَّ جَهَنَّمَ كَانَتْ مِرْصَادًا لِّلطَّاغِينَ مَآبًا لَّابِثِينَ فِيهَا أَحْقَابًا لَّا يَذُوقُونَ فِيهَا بَرْدًا وَلَا شَرَابًا لَا يَذُوقُونَ غساقا جزاء وفاقا إنهم كانوا لا يرجون حسابا وكذبوا بآياتنا كذابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا وكل شيء أحصيناه كتابا فذوقوا فلن نزيدكم إلا عذابا إن للمتقين مفازا حدائق وأعنابا وكواعب أترابا وكأسا دهاقا لا يسمعون فيها لغوا ولا كذابا جزاء من ربك عطاء حسابا رب السماوات والأرض وما بينهما الرحمن لا يملكون منه خطابا يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون يوم يقوم الروح والملائكة صفا لا يتكلمون إلا من أذن له الرحمن وقال صوابا ذلك اليوم الحق فمن شاء اتخذ إلى ربه مآبا إنا أنذرناكم عذابا قريبا يوم ينظر المرء ما قدمت يداه ويقول الكافر يا ليتني كنت ترابا صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for that beautiful Quran recitation, Brother Muhammad Ali. Thank you for all gracing us with your presence today. And before I continue, can I please ask everybody who's seated on the floor, not the chairs, to move forward as far as possible. We can have a loud salawat at the same time. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Oh, we. So I'm sure, like myself, you all appreciate the lovely setting that we're in here today at the Al-Mahdi Institute. The Al-Mahdi Institute is home to world-class Muslim scholarship and continues to provide a vital platform for open, authentic, and conscientious ethical and critical study of Islam. And that's very, very important. Aside from the cutting-edge research, the Al-Mahdi Institute offers an online Hawza program, which you can study at your own pace. And the final year even provides an option of obtaining a master's degree from the University of Birmingham. There is lots of information on the website, almahdi.edu, or grab yourself a prospectus or the latest edition of the Insights magazine from the foyer. I believe there's a further opportunity to sponsor this program, or if you feel inclined to donate to the Institute, donations are welcome and can be made in the reception via cash or card. This year's lecture series is sponsored on behalf of the marhumin displayed on the TV screen located outside the chapel. Please can recite a Surah Fatiha and observe a moment's silence for these and all other marhumin. Just some housekeeping. In case of any emergency, the fire exits are located at the back of the chapel, the main entrance outside the chapel, and the double doors by the dining room. We do have extra capacity for overflow if our younger attendees feel a need for a little more space, maybe stretch their legs in the conference room. Some program reminders. We have a parallel program running from reception age children to the age of 6 in the dining hall. And those wishing to attend in person or maybe online, tomorrow night's program will start at 8 p.m. with Quran, followed by a lecture, matam, ziyarat, salah, and some refreshments. If you've missed out on a lecture, please visit our YouTube page, and I really implore you to go back and have a look at some of the lectures. The lectures will be available, and if you can't make it in person, shaykharif.com/live. To stay up to date with all things AMI, please follow them on social media and subscribe and follow. And I think that's all the announcements. So before I ask Shaykh to take his seat for tonight's lecture, which is part 3, tonight we'll have a question and answer. And it will start immediately after Ziyarah. So if I can ask you to remain after Ziyarah, remain seated, and then we'll have Salah after the Q&A. There'll be a short announcement about who's Hussein, who are selling some merchandise at the back as well. So I know there's a number of questions, and if you were here on Wednesday, I think Sheikh's lecture left us all kind of questioning ourselves, and that's his typical fashion. It takes a lot of confidence to sit on the mimbar, but actually it takes a lot of bravery to tell the truth. So because it is night 3, can we have 3 loud salawats to welcome Shaykh to the mimbar?
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So we stated the problem about the conflicts that are within our minds in relation to God, the nature of our life, how we got here, where are we going. These are serious problems. Now, this does not mean that the religious texts are not accurate. They are accurate. Our way of understanding them is inaccurate. The inner being yearns for a God who is loving, caring, kind, merciful, because that is the nature of God that is within us. Today's world, we are advancing in our human values. We no longer discriminate on the basis of color, status, religion. A fellow human being needs to be assisted regardless of what they are. Even a hard-hearted criminal, if they are dying of thirst, our inner being, our inner humanity, which is the breath of God, will impel us to save their life. It would not make us hard-hearted or vengeful to kill that person. The child of an enemy, we will adopt them and raise them, and we will say, what fault is it of that child? This is the inner God within us. And this is conflicting with the God that has been understood at this level within the mind through religious teachings. Now, as I say, there is nothing wrong with religious teaching. They are all accurate, provided they are sourced from the impeccable source of the Quran. I am not talking about the deliberations of scholars over the communication of God. I'm talking about someone like the Prophet saying something that is accurate. Someone like the first Imam or the subsequent Imams, something like the Quran. The problem is, we don't know what the Prophet said accurately, we don't know what the Imam said, but we have the Quran and we know this is at least I'm very satisfied that this is the Quran. Now, I will remind you what I said something something a few years ago. That phenomenal philosopher said, he said, you see that creature that is taking flight, as soon as you name it, you will never see that creature for what it is. You will always see your definition of it. This is how the human mind works. When we bring about assumptions within our minds or presumptions, then when we read a text, it is read under the influence of those assumptions. And we never read the text for what it says. Unlike us were the first Muslims. Unlike us was the Blessed Prophet, who would ask Gabriel, What does this mean? I'm saying in all likelihood, he would ask Gabriel, what does this mean? What is it alluding to? The Sahaba would come to the Prophet and say, well, what does this mean? The Sahaba of Imam Sadiq would come to Imam Sadiq and say, well, what does this mean? And we are going to go through one of those instances in which people did ask Imam Sadiq, and he gave a very relative, no, a total different slant, a radically different meaning to a verse that we presume to understand. So there is a conflict between what is in here and what is here. In here is a beautiful God who is not oppressive, who is kinder than the kindest mother. If the mothers of the entirety of humanity can be put together, and the mothers of the entirety of the creation of God can be put together, they will not amount to a single ray of the mercy of my beautiful Lord. That is how my God is. And that is why Ali says, burn me in his love, and I will cry out that I'm in love with him as I burn to ashes, and he reconstructs me and burns me again. Do you not see something has gone wrong? God is not lying. The mistake is in there, in our understanding. So we do need to respond to these questions. Now, the threats are all true. There is a hell. It is a place that is not kind. I will take my own fire to my hell. There is a place like hell, but the fire will be generated by me myself. The whole role of God here is to put out the fire. I asked God, why did you send me to this world in the first place? He said, did I send you? Have you got it right in your mind? Have I ever told you that I've sent you here in the naive way that in which you have understood? So here it is. We need to re-understand afresh. I'm going to take these talks very slowly. They are very sensitive. I would like you to have your devices with you from today, your Quran, and read with me, yes, as we go through these talks. And I want to recap on yesterday as we commence into these talks. And it's one of those journeys in which when you set sail, there is no turning back, unfortunately. Yeah, either your ship gets wrecked and you drown, or you sail to the shores of safety on the other side. I haven't found them yet, and I don't think there is any safety in this journey. I think the journey was meant to be turbulent, and we were meant to be warriors, and we were meant to say, bring it on. The momentous wave, come, take me. That sounds like Bollywood, doesn't it, or Hollywood? Yeah. It's not month of Ramadan, so one is not immune from shaitan. So now, you see, when a child is suffering, because the child has not taken care of his own health, the mother doesn't hate the child, the physician doesn't hate the child. The mother says, I'm by your side, I'll help you come through it. When I go and a sentence is passed against me for all the wrongs that I have done, the judge doesn't hate me. And my mother will not leave me even whilst I'm in my prison. When the instructor tells me, look, you will fail if you don't study hard. There's a reason why you're here. Your mind is too tender to understand why you're here. But trust me, you will fail if you do not do your work. He is being stern and severe. That sternness and severity is to be seen differently. It's to be understood as compassion. We will go through this bit by bit. But that does not mean the teacher hates me. When he gives me homework, when he detains me or gives me detention, then I've had quite a few. And it still turned out the way I am. That doesn't mean that the teacher hates me. And when I fail my exam, my mother will be proud of me still. She will always be by my side. Ali says the same thing to Allah. Even if I go to the pits of hell, don't leave my side. Don't leave my side. Be with me. That is the God we want. We want to find that God amidst the turbulence of life, death, grave, and hereafter. Let's not make God the monster that is waiting to kill me and take me into the grave and punish me and squeeze me. Let God be the one who says to me, even if it's dark there, I'll be your light. Even if it crushes you, I will reassemble you. Even if you're frightened, I'll keep you company. Let God be that one. Let God be the one who says, even when you stand in front of my judgment, you know full well within a judge is your parent and your friend and your love. Even when I pass my judgment against you, know full well that my heart is with you and I will never leave your side. Let us understand God in that beautiful way. But we have to get through a difficult topic. I'm going to recap from yesterday. What we said yesterday was that He, the Nameless One, cannot be spoken of. He, as Allah, is the first and the last, the apparent and the hidden. He is the light of the heavens and the earth, the ineffable one, the one who cannot be described, the one who is and nothing else beside Him. Wherever you turn, there you shall see the face of your Lord. There is nothing but He, the Blessed One. At the level of God and the one who creates, He has absolute knowledge of everything. He has absolute control over everything. He has the pen of destiny in His hand. He wipes clean what He likes. He establishes what He likes. No one comes between God and His decision. He has the final decision. Even when the Quran says, Inna Allah yaghfiru liman yasha, Inna Allah la yaghfir an yushraka bihi wa yaghfiru duna dhalika liman yasha. Allah will not forgive that you associate with Him, but He will forgive whatever else He wants for whoever He wants. This is what the verse says twice in Al Imran, I believe. Then the Quran calls out, Lillah ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. Yaghfiru liman yasha wa yu'adhibu man yasha. Or yu'adhibu man yasha wa yaghfiru liman yasha. For Allah is whatever is within the heavens and the earth. He forgives whoever He wants. There is no contradiction. There is a way to understand these things. Even shirk, that verse is saying, I can forgive whatever I want. How dare anybody puts a limit upon God? None can put a limit upon God, the merciful one. Full control, full knowledge, full ability, full discretion. There is nothing but Allah. Then we came to this point, which will be the starting base for this lecture and those that are to follow in the next 2 days. Ma min ilahin illallah. There is no God save Allah. Now, how do we understand La ilaha illallah? How do we understand it? Ilah is the one who creates, governs, the point of duality. The duality that we will conclude at some point is a illusory duality. Otherwise, He is the first and the last, the apparent and the hidden. He is the light of the heavens and the earth. So where does this duality fit in? It is an illusory duality. It is not a real duality. Nonetheless, it is a duality. We are experiencing ourselves here right now. We are other than God, right? And He is saying, there is nothing other than me. But we nonetheless are presuming we are other than God. So this duality comes at the level of God creating His creative act. So the Quran says, La ilaha illallah. And here I need your attention to the max, okay? La fata illa Ali, la sayf illa dhul fiqar. There is no youth save Ali. Does that mean there are no more youths other than Imam Ali? Does that mean there are no more swords other than Dhul Fiqar? The way to interpret it, there are 3 ways. One is that the perfect specimen of a youth is Ali. And the perfect sword is Dhul Fiqar. Yes, you have other youths, but they are not the perfect archetypal youth like Ali. You have other swords, but none is a sword worthy of being called sword absolutely like Dhul Fiqar. That's the first way to understand. So there are other youths. La ilaha illa Allah. There is no ilah. Allah is the rightest God. You might have other beings who function like ilah, like the angels, sometimes carry out godly duties, killing, giving life, apportioning sustenance. Angels are doing all these works. But la ilah, He is the perfect God. Then, and that's my majlis, isn't it? No worries, no worries. So that's one way of understanding it. La ilaha illa Allah. The other way of understanding it is La ilaha illallah. There is absolutely no God apart from Allah. That's it. There is no God. There has been no one conducting the duties of God or godly functions. Only God conducts godly functions. Finish. As simple as that. But the third one is understood this way: there is no authority save the authority of God. Yeah? Or there is no authority save my authority. In which case, all my subordinates who work on my authority, their exercise of their own authority is my exercise of my authority. The Quran says, Man yuti' Rasul faqad ata Allah. The one who is obedient to the Prophet is obedient to God. La ilaha illallah. There are all ilahs everywhere, everybody doing everything. But all of it is only my work. For you, it might be indirectly. For me, it's directly and indirectly, both put together. So, when the Prophet threw at the battle of Badr, he recited on pebbles, and then he threw the stones towards the army of the opponents. The verse came, Ma ramait idh ramait walakin Allah ar-rama. You did not throw when you threw, O Prophet, but Allah threw instead. So the action of the Prophet is attributed to God. It is my action. What does that mean? That means that nothing is taking place save by the most beautiful one. And we can see that all three of these meanings are compatible with La ilaha illa Allah. That there is absolutely no God. Finish, it's only Allah. Allah is the rightest God. There is no one who can conduct his duties. Whatever anybody does, it's Allah's creation at the end of the day. So we make the Eiffel Tower, Allah will take pride, this is my creation. Because after all, who has given us the genius? Who has given us the brain? Who has empowered us to think? Through whom do we think? It is only Allah. Can you not see that? We come back to that particular analogy. How momentous is the wave? It is nothing but the ocean. It is but the ocean. How can you give independence to a wave? It is but the ocean. Now, if we have understood this, then we say, okay, then, what is the Blessed One by definition at the level of God? Not at the level of the unknown, the one who cannot be spoken of. Not at the level of Allah, the overwhelming absolute beauty, the light of all lights beside whom there is nothing. But Allah as God, how do we define Him? The Quran gives His definition. And that's the most perfect definition. And that is what makes God, God in terms of Allah. أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ أَنْتُمْ فُقَرَاء إِلَى اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ غَنِيٌّ عَنِ الْعَالَمِينَ. O people, you are in need of Allah. Allah is needless of the worlds. That is His definition. He is without need. Find me something within the trillions of galaxies and all its inhabitants, within the multidimensional universe, anywhere you want to look, even in the 10th dimension. I mean, 10th dimension is something difficult to conceive, but in the 6th or 7th dimension, you must be thinking he's showing off here, don't you? Yeah, salawat. I didn't mean to do that. So I don't know what the 4th dimension is. Forget the 10th dimension is coming down to the 7th dimension, you know. And I'm not on anything. It's so sweet that's in my mouth right now. I don't know what that has inside it. But anything in any dimension, in any universe, is in a state of need. Does not subsist by itself, subsists through God. God subsists by Himself. And that is the clearest definition of Allah as the Creator. If we've got that, now we come to the real issue at hand. Let us step into the Quran. Now here, we have to understand that the Quran is the word of God. No doubt. But the same thing that we concluded in La ilaha illallah, that there might be other people who are sustaining, like a father sustains the child who is Rabb of the child. The mother who creates the child, who is the Rabb of the child. But it is only Allah who is Rabbul Alameen. And through being Rabbul Alameen, Allah is the Rabb of that child being created within the womb. And is the Rabb of that child whose father is feeding him. And that is the hand of God and the sustenance of God being fed to a hungry child. In that way, The Quran is the word of God. Now, let's go through these wonderful, phenomenal verses. Surah Yunus 37. وَمَا كَانَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ أَن يُفْتَرَى مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. This Quran cannot be invented or concocted from other than God, from other than Allah. Surah Ali Imran, verses 1 and 2. Allah, la ilaha illahu al-hayy al-qayyum. Allah, there is no God save Allah, the ever-living, the ever-establishing. Nazzala alayka al-kitaba bil-haqq. He has revealed the book upon you with the truth. Shu'ara 92-93. Innahu latanzilu rabbil alameen. It is the revelation of the Lord of all worlds. Nazala bihi ruhul amin. And I'm going to come back to this segment much later. Ruhul amin has revealed it upon you. Surah An-Nisa, verse 82. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Do they not reflect upon the Quran? وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ. Had it been from other than Allah, لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. They would have found therein many contradictions. Now, I've spoken of this at length in Book 4 of Islam and God Centricity, and to an extent in Book 3. Please refer to it. I'm not going to conduct those discussions here because the discussions are different right now. Now, it is from God. However, the question arises, who is talking inside it? Can you see that? It is ordained by God. It is from God. But who is talking inside this Quran? Is it only God talking inside it? Now let's look at those two verses. Hamim wal kitabil mubin inna anzalnahu fi laylatin mubarakatin inna kunna mundirin. Hamim, and the glorious book, we revealed it in a blessed night. We, not I, not he, not Allah. Then another verse. Hamim wal kitabil mubin. Hamim, and the apparent book. Inna ja'alnahu Qur'anan Arabiyya la'allakum ta'aqilun. Hamim, and the apparent book. We made the book into Arabic so that you may comprehend it. The book is not Arabic. Arabic is an accidental feature. Who has rendered it into Arabic? Are you seeing? Hamim wal kitabil mubin. Inna ja'alnahu, we made it, the book, Qur'anan Arabiyan. We made it into an Arabic Qur'an. Now, if you look at the verses of the Quran, there are quite a few, and I've discussed it in Book 4. We gave the book to Isa, we gave the book to Moses, we gave you the book. We made the book into Arabic. So Arabic is not the feature of the book. Who has rendered it into Arabic? And why into Arabic? Now, I want us to consider the following sets of verses with me calmly. Surah Safat 158 to 166. Please, everybody. 158 to 166. Okay, whichever translation you pick out, just don't read whatever comes inside the brackets and the parentheses, yeah? Because that is the translator's interpretation. And that's where the most of the mistakes come. Have you got it? 158. And they have invented a kinship between him and the jinns. But the jinns know well that they have indeed to appear before him. Who is saying this? We don't know. It's in the Quran. 159. Glorified is Allah from what they attribute unto him. 160. Except the slaves of Allah, whom he chooses. 161. So verily you are those whom you worship. So verily you pagans and those whom you worship, i.e. your idols, except those who are predestined to burn in hell. And your idols cannot lead astray from Allah any one of the believers, except those who are predestined to burn in hell. There is not one of us. Now the Quran is going on. These verses are being recited, and then this verse comes. It is these verses, the following verses, we will presume they are from God, wouldn't we? the ones that have gone before. Now look at this verse 164. It's continuing. There is not one of us but has his known place. Who is talking here? Ma minna illa lahu maqamun ma'lum. Who is this? There is none amongst us, but we have a fixed rank. Wa inna lanahnu safun. And we are the ones who stand in rows. Wa inna lanahnu al-musabbihun. And we are the ones who do the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are surely, this is not God talking, is it? Who is talking there? What will you say? It's an angel, right? It's an angel talking. So that's the first thing we need to understand. That the reading of the Quran shows that it is not God always talking. That's the naivety we have in our mind. It is ordained by God. But is God talking? So as soon as we understand that it's the angel talking, what happens? The very first thing we see is that the we here is not the royal we. What have we been understanding all this while? Our assumption that the we in the Quran is the royal we. Allah is using we for himself. I need to understand that you've got this. In the Quran, we have he, I. We also have we, don't we? And the we is understood to mean I, God, in terms of the royal I or the royal we. Yeah? But we means I. But here, وَمَا مِنَّا إِلَّا وَلَهُ مَقَامٌ مَعْلُومٌ. There is none amongst us but that we have our proper rank. وَإِنَّا لَنَحْنُ الصَّافُونَ. We are the ones who stand in rows. وَإِنَّا لَنَحْنُ الْمُسَبِّحُونَ. And we are the people, or we are the ones who give tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So immediately we know that here it is not the royal we. Now you will say these are angels, right? Possibly. But let's go on. Surah Safat, verse 150. Yeah? Look at it. Open it so I can just do it, yeah? So that is before the group of verses that I just recited. In those verses, the Quranic verses were saying that they have constructed a relationship between Allah and the angels and say that the angels are females. They are saying, what be the matter with you that you want sons and you want to give Allah daughters? Then after that comes the verse. Am khalaqna al-malaikati inathan wa hum shahidun. Have we created angels as females and they were witnessing it? The same we is talking here. Can you see that? The we that says that we stand in rows and we do the tasbih of Allah, which we said are the angels. The same we is saying a few verses earlier that did they witness us, we, creating the angels as females? So that puts this we above some angels at least. Can you see that? So this we is not God. This we is also saying we created the angels. And were they witnesses? Now you can say yes, it is angels with God who is creating it, but maybe certain types of angels, of a higher order. Okay. Let's go to other verses. So we've concluded here so far that, okay, fine, this we is not God at least. It can be a higher rank of angels who have initiated or God has initiated through them the creation of some levels of angels who are not females in response to what the pagans were saying. Has that gone through? Yeah? So we are still ambiguous about this we. Open Surah Zukhruf 49 to 55. Got it? And they said to Moses, these are verses about Moses and Pharaoh, of all the tribulations that was sent onto the Pharaoh for them to revert to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how Pharaoh was playing games. Whichever sign was coming from God as a chastisement, they would go to Moses, they would say, tell your Lord to take it away, we are going to be righteous now. It's that story. It's been there in the Quran, it's narrated in the Quran in several places. This is in Zukhruf. And they said to Moses, "O you sorcerer, ayyuha sahir." They said, "You sorcerer, sahir, Can you see that? They're very obstinate people. You, Sahir, invoke your Lord for us according to what he has covenanted with you. Verily, we shall guide ourselves aright. But when we removed the torment from them, behold, they broke their covenant. And Pharaoh proclaimed amongst his people, saying, O my people, is it not mine the dominion of Egypt, and these rivers flowing underneath me? See you not then? So Pharaoh turned again. It's being narrated and told, the story. Am I not better than this one, Moses, the Mahin, the dishonorable one? And can scarcely express himself clearly? Pharaoh was laughing at Moses because Moses was stuttering. He said, am I not better than this one who can't even talk properly? Why then, Pharaoh is continuing, why then are not golden bracelets bestowed on him or angels sent along with him? O people, if he was indeed from God, then surely treasures should be accompanying him. There should be rows of angels with him. I don't see anything with him. He's a sorcerer. Thus he, Pharaoh, befooled and misled his people, and they obeyed him. Verily, they were ever a people who were fasiqun, rebellious, disobedient to Allah. Now what happens? The next verse. It's phenomenal. فَلَمَّا آسَفُونَا انْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ فَأَغْرَقْنَاهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. And when they angered us, we sought revenge from all of them when we drowned them all. Now tell me, does God speak like this? And when they angered us, does God speak like this? I'll tell you, I've always said this, that if I can spend 24 hours with one person in the history of mankind, it would be Imam Sadiq and nobody else. I'll say, the Prophet forgive me, but this is the man I want to be with. The man was phenomenal. Like, phenomenal is not the word. So they asked Imam Sadiq, they said, what is this? وَلَمَّا آسَفُونَا انْتَقَمْنَا مِنْهُمْ وَأَغْرَقْنَاهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. How can God talk like this? Imam Sadiq said, it is not God talking. He said, it is not God talking. God does not have these emotions of rage. Yes, the speech is ordained by God. But who is it phrased by? Who is it articulating? Who is talking? Who is phrasing it? Who is rendering it into Arabic? On the one hand, we say, Inna anzalnahu fi laylatin mubarakatin, inna kunna munzirin. We revealed it on a Mubarak night. Nazzalahu. Nazzala bihi Ruhul Amin. Nazzalahu Ruhul Quds. Ruhul Quds has revealed it. Ruhul Amin has revealed it. See? And we have revealed it. The Imam said, God does not encounter or experience emotions of rage and love and anything. Rather, these are noble beings that are expressing on behalf of God. This is the hadith of Imam Sadiq, yet it is from God. You have to understand it from God, but you have to understand that God is above all of this. You see, Imam Sadiq was phenomenal. He had to maintain that beautiful understanding of God as the most beautiful one and nothing other than God. So when that verse came, وَجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. Faces on that day will be radiant, looking at their Lord. They said to Imam Sadiq, will we look at our Lord? So Imam Sadiq immediately understood the problem, that they think they will look at Allah, the unseeable one. So he said, no, they will be looking at the mercy of their Lord. So there will be something they'll be looking at, but for you, it is the mercy of God, not God himself, because he cannot be seen. Yet he did not deny that the verse is accurate. He said the verse is accurate, but there's a different way of understanding it. They'll be looking at something, but it is not what you think. Yeah. So here, what is the we? Here we again is not the royal we. So you can say this is the angel, or these are lofty angels that God has created and who are acting out. Turn to Surah Anbiya. We want to just figure out to the minimal extent the nature of the we. Okay? Verse 26 onwards. So here the issue is that people were attributing a son to God, Nabi Isa. Now the thing about the Quran is that if you can learn to read the Quran accurately, it gives meanings in its structures. When Mary Salamullah alayha is being told the good news that Isa will be given to her, وَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, she's being told he will be the kalima of Allah, he will be the word of God. Yes? وَمِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, and amongst the proximate ones. Then another verse comes. The angels will not cease to worship, the malaikatul muqarrabin will not cease to worship God, and neither will Masih. Masih is brought again with the proximate angel in the same verse. Yeah? وَلَا لَنْ يَسْتَنْكَفْ الْمَسِيحِ أَنْ يَكُونَ عَبْدًا لِلَّهِ وَلَا الْمَلَائِكَةُ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. Masih will not cease to be the slave of Allah, and neither shall the malaikatul muqarrabun. Malaika muqarrabun and Masih are mentioned together. In this verse in Surah Anbiya, they say God has taken a son. It's in response to that. And they say the most beneficent Allah has begotten a son. Glory be to him. They are but honored slaves. They are not sons of God, they are honored slaves of God. They speak not until he has spoken, and they act on his command. These noble creatures who are the prophets, Isa and others. He knows what is before them and what is behind them, and they cannot intercede except for him with whom he is pleased. They will not intercede for any human creature save the one Allah is pleased with. And they stand in awe for fear of him, in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then look what happens after that. Verse 28. وَمَن يَقُلْ مِنْهُمْ إِنِّي إِلَهٌ مِّن دُونِهِ. And whoever amongst them, these noble creatures who are presumably the prophets, and he who amongst them says that I am God, other than God, فَذَلِكَ نَجْزِيهِ جَهَنَّمْ. We will cast them into hell. كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الظَّالِمِينَ. And in this way, we recompense the oppressive ones. So here you're talking about no ordinary prophet, you're talking about Ruhullah, the kalima of Allah. And this verse is saying, if the Ruhullah were to say, I am God other than God, we will put him in hell. So imagine the lofty status of this we is in there. And this is possibly the very finest rank of God's angels. But the point I was trying to make here is that the royal we is not the royal we in the most accurate sense. But you can say it is from the divine realm, and not it is from Allah and from a divine realm, because this realm is beyond all the prophets and all the other angels. Forget about humans and jinns in the whole of the galaxies and intertwined universes. So it is from the divine realm, yet it is from an agency that is not directly God, the phrasing of the verse. Now look at this verse. It's a phenomenal verse, Surah Zukhruf 45. And I want you to pay close attention, and after this, I hope you don't read the Quran the same way again, yeah? And it opens up oceans of meanings. وَاسْأَلْ مَنْ أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ مِنْ رُسُلِنَا. Ask who we have sent before you, O Muhammad, amongst our messengers. Imagine, the we is saying, ask those we sent before you, amongst our messengers. أَجَعَلْنَا مِن دُونِ الرَّحْمَنِ آلِهَةً يُعْبَدُونَ. Did we make other than Ar-Rahman a God that they should worship? So who are these we who are saying, ask every prophet, did we make other than Rahman the God? Are you getting the picture here? The message is coming through? I can see confusion. Yeah? Just don't look confused, yeah? Now look at these verses in Surah Ahzab 45, 46. Okay? Ya ayyuhan nabi, O Nabi, inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. We have sent you as a witness, the giver of good tidings and a warner. Now look at what happens. وَدَاعِيًا إِلَى اللَّهِ, and a caller to Allah, بِإِذْنِهِ, with His consent. If Allah was speaking, He would say, وَأَرْسَلْنَاكَ دَاعِيًا, and we have sent you a caller. Why would Allah need to say, we made you a caller to Allah by the consent of Allah? Can you see that? So here the royal we is not the royal we. Allah has been made the other one by the consent of God. And you can see evidence for this in Surah Al-Imran 46. Isa says, إِنِّي أَخْلُقُ لَكُم مِّنَ الطِّينِ كَهَيْئَةِ الطَّيْرِ فَأَنْفَخُ فِيهِ فَيَكُونُ طَيْرًا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. I will create for you from mud or dust or clay the form of a bird. I shall blow into it and it will become a bird by the consent of Allah. Can you see that? The consent of Allah is being procured by Isa. The consent of Allah is being procured by the we in this verse. Is it becoming clearer? That the royal we can be Allah in others, but at times it is definitely not Allah. It's definitely not the royal we. Yep. So now with this, you will make sense of these different verses. أم حسبت أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يعلم الله الذين جاهدوا منكم ويعلم الصادقين. And have you assumed that it's Ali Imran 142. Have you assumed that you will enter into paradise whilst God has yet to know the people who have struggled amongst you and those who are persevering? Can God speak like this? God has yet to know. Do you assume you'll go into paradise and God has yet to know? It is spoken on behalf of God. Can you see that? So all these anomalies, these confusions that are in our head, that God is saying this and God is saying this, and I will say yes, it is correct to say God is saying it. If it is, because everything in the Quran is ordained by God, it is correct to say God is saying it. It is also correct to say the Quran is saying it. From time to time, I deliberately say the Quran is saying it as opposed to committing myself to saying God is saying it. And at times I say God is saying it because both are accurate. But if we've got this understanding in the mind, then we can say God is saying it. It is right to say God will burn us. And it is right to say the Quran is saying God will burn us. Can you see that? So now when the verse comes, oh Muhammad, don't pray for them. Don't stand at their graves. Even if you pray for them 70 times, God will never forgive them. Can you see this? You see, this is accurate. Hypocrisy is a disease that does not allow us to reach to the fullness of our light and potential. And we will see in 3-4 days' time why we are here. We are here because we have made a mess, and that's why we are here. Not because one fine day he just felt like, oh, let's create a human being. Like we think he just felt like creating Adam and that's it, sending him here. That God doesn't make sense. Yeah, it's a wrong number. I don't know if you watched the movie. Did you watch the movie, by the way? Yeah? No, mind. Don't pray for them. God will never forgive them. You see, it is said on behalf of God. And it's an accurate statement. Because you need to be warded off from there, otherwise you're going to fail your test. You're going to fail your test, and we want to secure as many and get them out of this dungeon. The Prophet said this life is a prison. We haven't understood it accurately. Shaitan said to God, I will embellish this world for them. This world is not beautiful. Yes, it is beautiful in terms of it being a beautiful creation of God, but it's not beautiful in the way our hearts have become inclined to it. Shaitan said, I will beautify this world for them, embellish it for them, and you will find them all astray. Can you see that? Don't pray for them. Allah will never forgive them. It is being phrased in a particular manner and truthfully phrased. But Allah says, يَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah will forgive whoever He wants. Can you see that? The mercy of God is not bound by anything. I used to often ask myself in my early days that even if God commits Himself in the Quran, He can change His view. Then I understood that no, God is the absolute one. He can wipe clean what He wants. The Quran itself shows ambivalence when it comes to God. Yes? It shows ambivalence. None could have saved Qarun from what we decreed for him except for Allah. The verse says, وَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضِ وَمَا كَانَ لَهُ مِنْ فِئَةٍ يَنْصُرُونَهُ مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ. There was none that could save him except for Allah. He could have overruled all of us. Can you see that? So the Quran very diligently, very honestly is giving a story. The problem is with us who have assumed too much and who are not going like fresh slates. Now, my time is finished, but I'll just go on to this note that look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is too grand to have enemies. Yes? Allah is too lofty, is too lofty. If the Blessed Hussein, at that point when he was meeting God, did not have any enmity left in his heart, that what can you say about the Lord of Hussein? It's not possible, is it? The Prophet cannot be kinder than God. Hussein cannot be kinder than God. They are mere reflections, a ray of light of the splendor of the most majestic one. Whatever beauty you found in Imam Hussein, as he tasted the blade, is the beauty borrowed from God for that moment. God is like that. I'm going to leave us with this message today. Read the Quran. Frightful events are there, but say to Allah, as the Imam has said in the Quran, I make you my means to you yourself. Even when you dispense with justice, I will call out to you from within there. Even if I go to hell, I will call out to you from within there. Do not leave me and save me. That is the confidence we need to have with God. God is the only friend, as he says, Waliyul Mu'mineen, Waliyul Ladina Amanu. Keep that beautiful relationship with God intact. Our relationship with God is, I trust God and God will save me. No, go a notch above it. God, give me that relationship in which even when I'm burned to ashes, every ash of mine calls out to you. As Hussein says, Lord, if these blades were to tear me into pieces, every drop of my blood will call out to you. Keep God there. That is our relationship with God. I'm going to briefly narrate the story of our beloved Imam. He leaves the people and says, Oh people, at your invitation I have come. I have not come without being called by you. If you've taken away your oath of allegiance, allow me to leave. Do not block my path. Hur said, I have no knowledge of this. 2 sacks of letters were brought, and Imam Hussein took out the letters and called out the names of the writers, and they bowed their heads in embarrassment. Hur said, Oh Hussein, I have no knowledge of any of this. Imam Hussein said to Hur, allow me to leave. Hur said, I cannot. Ibn Ziyad has given me instructions to take you back to him or not to leave your side. When Hussein mounted his steed, Hur said to him, O Hussein, engage not in war with these people. for they will put you to death. Do you frighten me with death? Hussein said to him, death is closer to you than it is to me. Who remained silent. As Hussein was spurring his steed, Hur grabbed the reins. As he grabbed the reins of Hussein's steed, Hussein said, Thaqulatka ummuk. May your mother weep at your death. Hur startled. Then he spoke. If other than you were to have uttered these words, I would have responded in a like manner. But what may I do but salute your mother? Then Hur said, Hussein, I admonish you, do not engage with these people. They have no mercy for you. At that point, Imam Hussein recited poetry recited by a person of Aus. He said, there is no blemish upon a youth who is a Muslim and who advances in the way of truth. If he lives without blemish. If he dies on the truth. Sufficient is this indignity for you, O Hur, that you call yourself a free man and your nose is rubbed in dust of humiliation. Hur understood the intent of Hussein. Hur accompanied Hussein. I go towards the end of this narration. Hussein asks, as he arrives towards the Euphrates, Zuhair says, it is good for us to camp near the water. Take me to a village. He comes to a place, and I narrate a sentiment. His faithful steed stops. Hussein spurs his steed, but he would not move. He changed his steed, and he changes several steeds, but all of them refuse to move. He asks Zuhair, what be the name of this place? He says, the Euphrates, the banks of Euphrates. He said, is there any other name? He said, its name is Nainawa. He said, is there any other name? He said, its name is Karbala. As Hussein hears the name Karbala, he says, I seek refuge in Allah from Karb and Bala. Dismounts his steed, takes his spear and embeds it into the ground of Karbala. By Allah, this will be our resting place. By God, here our tents will be erected. Here shall our blood flow. Here shall our women become captives. Here shall our children scatter within the wilderness. Al-Fatiha. Matame Hussein.
Assalamu alaikum. It's a little more informal, so please feel free if you want to grab your chairs as well and come forward. That's fine as well. Thank you. We've had the pleasure of having Shaykh deliver 3 lectures now. I know there's a lot of questions. A lot of people have had a lot of questions outside. If you go, there's people who have got questions who are also coming in. But it's a really good opportunity. If anybody has a question to begin with, that's fine. Other than asking Shaykh what his top 10 movies are to watch, anything else? Does anybody want to start?
Assalamualaikum, Shaykh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you for the very interesting lecture series so far. Shaykh, when you said that God is displaying or seemingly displaying human-like qualities, was that a teaser to say that there's something else that's displaying human-like qualities, or is it really God? And if it's something else, then how do you qualify verses like "Wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin," where God loves the good doers? So how would
We have to understand something about the Quran. The Quran is constructed around the human being. So you will see in the Quran that the earth and heavens flow from the human perspective. We know from our cosmology, although I'll be talking about this in the later lectures, that the heavens and the earth, they're not the way we've assumed them to be according to the Quran. There's a very different cosmology that the Quran gives. But nonetheless, human life is the central theme of the Quran. Human salvation, human genesis, and the rest of the cosmos is created around humanity. So the Quran is tailored towards humanity. And that's why God, as the author, governor, the manager of human beings, in that aspect of God, it's very human-centered, the way God presents himself. Yeah? The one who displays human-like emotions and he loves the Mohsinin and so on and so forth, is very much human-centered, anthropocentric. It's human-centered. But that does not mean God as he is the one that is unknown. It does not mean Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth, the apparent and hidden, is well beyond any one aspect of his creative work. It's a great favor that it's narrowed in and honed in into the human psychology and talking to the humans at the human level and the level of human condition. So we will be talking a little bit about that in the lectures that are to come.
Thank you, Sheikh, for the lectures. One question that arose from tonight's lecture is that you were describing a kind of multi-layered theology, and some of the those who are seen to express in the Quran are not the ultimate God. That ultimate God we know or recognize to be completely knowledgeable of everything. However, in one of the verses you quoted from Surah Al-Imran, with those secondary agencies saying, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةَ وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا مِنْكُمْ. So they are saying that, do you think you'll enter Jannah where God doesn't yet know? And you were saying, would Allah speak like this? But then they're describing God as someone whose knowledge seems to be limited or is still developing. So is there a contradiction in the way they are describing? And if so, then how can we rely on them anyway?
So, you see, if you look at the layered approach, and this is obviously the theology that I espouse and talk about in my classes, that if you look at God operating within different dimensions, if you look at the higher dimensions, there is no time notion of being flowing from moment to moment. It is absolute present, and the present has past, present, future as the present. It's more like the block universe. In the block universe, it's like this room. For somebody who's stuck in 2 dimensions and they start moving in one direction, they don't know what is at the end of the room. But for us who are within the 4th dimension, by 4th I mean time as well, we are present with the whole room all at once. We can see the whole room, it's there. But the one who is in 2nd dimension is exploring the room step by step. Now, When we talk of God from the sixth dimension, then everything has happened. And that would then corroborate with the verses of the Quran, where God speaks to Isa. Akulta, he said, O Isa, did you say to the people, take me and my mother as gods? So this verse is here right now, we are reading it. Qiyamah has yet to occur. But that verse presumes Qiyamah has already occurred. And if you were to see them, how they will be with their heads lowered in front of me on the day of Qiyamah, pleading, this has already happened, according to those verses. And it is yet to happen. Can you see that? So it depends from which dimension you're looking. So the authorship of God, whether God as the ineffable one, or God as the one intimately involved, Zahir and Batin, Awwal and Akhir, then at that level it is true to say that God has yet to know, because the fate has been left undetermined. Because if the fate was already determined at this level, then there would be no point in us being here. So you can say the fate is already known, it is in the making. Yeah? And there are different layers to this particular theory. And I'm going to be, if time permits, I think the last lecture, maybe the second last lecture, if time permits, if not, then the last lecture will be on free will and predestination, and in which we will explore these ideas. Yeah? So now, what I'm saying is that there are several expressions. God is the author of humanity in this dimension in which we are, has yet to know. Because otherwise, it's pointless to have this life. On the other hand, God is not phrasing this particular verse. It's been phrased. God has revealed the book. It's been phrased in Quran. And therefore, وَلَمَّا يَعْلَمِ اللَّهِ means you have yet to prove to God. Not that God does not already know, but you have yet to prove to God. And if you were to take the linear approach, God has yet to know as it is. And the knowledge is evolving at that level. Yeah. But I know it's a bit of a struggle to rejig the mind and to understand it at tiered level. And I'm glad you mentioned the tiered universe, because that's a theology that I normally teach.
Did that answer your question?
Sorry, I don't make sense. This Ya Alhamdulillah, what does it mean? Allah has yet to know.
Allah has yet to know.
Because what the translation I was following, it says Allah has yet to let you know.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the translation, yes?
Yeah.
So if you look at the translators, they already have this assumption in their mind that God cannot be like that. And then that shows up in their translations. So when you look at the verse, وَإِنَّا لَنَحْنُ الصَّافُونَ, so in that verse, it doesn't say nahnu al-malaika. It says we are the ones who stand in rows. And we know, all probability, it's the malaika. But it doesn't say malaika in there. The translator will put in the brackets, we, the angels, stand in rows. Can you see that? So there are many, many verses. When it says, I have, and the translation will put in brackets, I, Allah. Or they will simply replace I with Allah. So, and I don't, obviously that's the obvious thing to do, because that is the way we are accustomed to thinking. And these are the assumptions in our minds. God has yet to know. Now, if you were to say God knows everything, and despite that God has created, then the thing is that this is just a play, yeah, of God's foreknowledge. This doesn't have any meaning, this life. He knows already. So then we ask, there's a big problem then. Well, you knew the fate before you created us. Nothing happens without your consent. Everything as you will happen, and as you know, nothing can defy your knowledge. Then that does not make you a very kind God. And that's why we are saying that no, the nuance in the Quran, we need to be mindful of the nuance and unravel the bigger picture where everything starts actually making some sense. Yeah? So when you read the translations, you will see that the translators are not giving you the Quran, they are giving you a translation. Whatever I will say to you and express in these series of lectures are interpretations by a human mind. They are not accurately what the Quran is saying either. So we go through the verses, but obviously your understanding of them will be influenced by the slant I give. And that's the way life is, unfortunately. Yeah?
Okay, now you spoke about these agencies who are very lofty agencies. So if they are controlling things, so in that case, we cannot blame the Hindus or whoever else is, you know,
No, we're not blaming
you know,
anybody.
no, then giving them this. Similarly, for we saying that the Ahlul Bayt also have creative power and things like that. If Shia,
So the Quran makes it clear
yeah.
that the Prophet does not know the ilmul ghaib. The Quran makes it clear that the Prophet does not control destiny. He can't procure good or dispel evil. Now, when the Quran says that about the Prophet, then the family of the Prophet who claim themselves to be less than the Prophet, you know for a fact that this is now crossing a red line. Yeah? Now the Quran gives a response to this as well. The Quran gives a response to this. God asks on the day of Qiyamah to the angels, did they worship you? The angels respond, no, they worship the jinn. Now I'm going to go through that, if time permits, in lecture number 8 or 9 or somewhere there, as to who are the jinns, who are the angels, and the nuance and the variety that the Quran is giving us. It's not as simple as we've understood. So a lot of these Hindu mythologies, and before the Hindus, the Sumerian sort of tablets and whatever has in the cuneiform forms that have been written, we will see that actually no, the Quran does gesture at a response for those things because they appear quite challenging. But the Quran does make leverage to respond to that. Yes, that no, something has happened. It has happened, but it's not something that has been ordained by God. Yeah. So, by the way, these lofty agencies can possibly be angels, but they are above angels that we know, because the angels, as we will discuss, it's a very loose and a lazy, broad term that we use. But it's not supposed to be that loose, it's not supposed to be that lazy, it's not supposed to be that convenient. There's a lot of detail and nuance that we need to explore. It can also be angels with God. I'm not ruling it out, any of it, but all I wanted to say today was that the we is not always the royal we. Yeah, that's all I wanted to point out today.
Thank you, Shaykh, for your wonderful and
Thank you.
thought-provoking lecture. I have many questions to ask, but
Please
I
don't.
prefer to postpone them to the last
Yeah,
night.
no, please don't.
Because you may go to and touch upon them
Don't ask
later
any
on.
questions.
I just asked two of them. Do you agree with me that I agree with you that sometimes in the Quran we does not mean royal we, but I think it is possible in some other cases that the best interpretation would be to take the we in that particular case.
I would concur
well.
with you. I would
Okay.
concur with you. And that is why, line by line, with the context, it needs to be read. See, in my own journey, I don't know what worth has this journey been in any case. I've read the tafsir and I've found this tendency in me and the tafsir that I've read to have an assumption, an underlying assumption. And that underlying assumption influences the interpretation of the Quran.
Yeah.
And it's a very lazy interpretation, yet very convincing. Very lazy. There's so much nuance. The Quran says, Sami'un Basir. It doesn't say Basirun Sami'. It's an existential feature that it's phenomenal, the Quran. If you can study it line by line, word by word, I started realizing that, my God, it's a whole ocean that is unexplored. And you begin to read a different Quran altogether, the one you've never encountered. But it's frightful. I don't disagree. It's frightening. It's frightful. It takes many nights sleep away. Yeah, I remember I used to ask Allah, I said, can you just take me away now because I can't cope with this. It's that shattering. It is difficult. Yeah, and it's not nice. But once you come through it, it feels good.
Okay, the next question. Uh, do you agree with me if I rephrase your main point in this way? We can say that the whole Quran is the word of God.
Yes.
So the original speaker is always God.
Yes.
But sometimes God is quoting some other speakers.
It's there in the Quran. The Pharaoh is being quoted. The Pharaoh is being quoted.
Yeah.
وَقَالَ فِرْعَوْنَ.
No, when, for example, we have Anna or those verses you have mentioned, can we take them as a quotation?
So you see, I've discussed this in book 4. I'm sorry, you're my elder. I learned from you. But I've discussed this in book 4, that there is a huge distinction between kitab and Quran.
Yes.
Kitab is another reality. Yes? Kitabun Mubin. There is nothing but is in the Kitabun Mubin. Ummul Kitab, the mother of all books. Quran is an expression
Yeah.
of a
The
phenomenal
manifestation.
reality that has come as Suhuf, Ibrahim, that has come as Torah, that has come as Injil, that has come as Zabur, that has come as Quran. And the Quran maintains the same descent and the same message in the Quran as the books that have gone back, that have gone forward. So then I ask a question. But why is there this discrepancy between the Quran and the Torah, and Quran and the Injil, and Injil and the Torah, and Suhuf? In that book, I've discussed that, look, Quran is an expression. Arabic is not central to the Quran. The prophetic context is not central to the Quran. The Arabs are not central. The Badr is not central to the Quran. There is something else, the essence of the Quran, which is the same always. The forms have been changing. Now, if that's the case, who is rendering the forms? Who is phrasing it? The message is the same. It's different. Different in its form, in its phraseology, but same in its essence. Yeah?
Thank you.
So, but discuss that in book 4. Sure, yeah? No, please don't. I'm humbled that you would look at it. Thank you. A little bit in book 3 as well. Book 3 will start into it. Book 4 will go much more into it. Book 4, a whole lecture is dedicated to it.
So I've got one question which is sent in. I think it's further clarification from a question which was asked earlier. And then we'll take one more question from the audience.
Okay.
And then we'll ask the audience one question. Is that all right as well?
Yeah, up to you.
Brilliant. Okay. Great. So the question from the audience is, if God doesn't know everything that will happen, how is he the all-knowing? And does that not limit God then? Does God know everything that is going to happen or not?
So we just discussed this a little while ago.
I think they want clarification, so perhaps...
Okay, you see, look, if God is not phrasing this verse, then there's no problem. Because God has yet to know is like an older brother saying to the younger brother, our father has yet to know. Our father has yet to know, which means you have yet to prove yourself. Yeah? God knows, but you have yet to prove yourself. So it can be reinterpreted in that way. Yeah? The other way to understand it is a very, very difficult way and a tricky way, is that God, as the author of human life, and based on human life, He's going to judge us. God at that level, if He knows what the destinies are, then there's no point in this human life. Yeah? It becomes meaningless. Absolutely nothing. Can you see that? Now, what is the way in which we can make this manageable? There is a person, and I don't want to give analogies because your minds will run swiftly to those analogies and then it'll mess up the whole of your tonight. I don't want to give those analogies because I know what it does to people's minds. It's just like introducing a virus in there and just eats away. So I don't want to do that. But let's just say there is an ant walking, and the ant can only walk in one direction. Yeah? Now I can see the ant is going to get there, and I know that there are impediments, so the ant will have to maneuver this way and that way. So I know the full destiny of the ant. Yeah? From my perspective, I know the full destiny of the ant. So I know that poor ant is going to get exhausted and die before it gets to the food. I know it. I know it's not going to achieve anything, so I already know the destiny. But if I were to accompany the ant, yeah, and to see how well it strives, then I have yet to know how the ant will do. But from this perspective, I already know the poor thing is going to die out of starvation. It's not going to reach the food. So we have to understand the levels of knowledge of God, and they are all intertwined. Yeah. For now, I'm only going to give this much. Wait till about 4 lectures from now. We'll go into this. Okay. If Allah wills, yeah.
Sorry?
If Allah wills, and He already knows what He has willed, and He already knows what will happen. But for the one that is accompanying the present moment, if He wills. Yeah.
Last question.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Alaikum
I might have just a few questions, Shaykh. Yeah?
He's the boss here.
If you can just bear with me, please. Yeah? I'm just
He's the boss right now, yeah? It's like the we. Yeah.
Okay. I want to understand the perception or the thing you're saying, yeah? So, for example, when you say the ant, yeah?
The what? The ant?
The ant, yeah. So when you're saying that the ant is there and then you would know the destiny, like even if, like, let's say you see the ant, yeah, and you see the ant sort of suffer on the way, but you know where it's going, right? Isn't that from a human perception and from a human judgment? But isn't there another dimension where we cannot understand totally why it's happening? So, for example, suffering, Shaykh.
Yeah.
If you look deep down, it might grow. You might grow as a person when you look back.
Yeah.
So if that's the sort of level that you can achieve from suffering, then God knows how many more levels there is and different dimensions there is. So sometimes if we look at it from a human perspective, it might not make sense to us, Shaykh, right? Everything. So is it not correct to say that, God knows, even if we see it as unfair? So I might see somebody suffering and have, a sort of a cancer or disease, but that might be wiping his sins, for example. That's just an example, Sheikh.
No, absolutely.
That might give him a better position than me in the day of judgment. So the ultimate aim is, of course, not this dunya, yeah, Sheikh? So ultimately, that's not a suffering, Sheikh. But
so we're going to talk about this in a few lectures' time now, that this world and the cancer and everything here is not as real as we imagine it to be. And two, the sicknesses that we get is also due to a reason. It's not without a reason. And three, yes, of course, God uses that as an opportunity to refine us and to reclaim us. God is beautiful. And three, yes, the depths and depths and depth of knowledge we don't understand. We just want to make a sense. We just want to make sense of life to an extent that we start leading substantive life and we don't waste this opportunity of life. Yeah, that it is a very serious opportunity we've got here. And it's on the back of something terribly different that we've done. And a lot hinges on it as well. Yeah?
Yeah, just not gonna.
No, you're right.
Yeah. No, just,
and we want to discuss that.
Yeah, just trying to say that sometimes from our human judgment or our human perception, whatever we look at, there is more to it. There is a lot more
there's
beyond.
Ultimately more to it. Even the grand angels, if they are angels talking in the Quran, They express their limitation. They say, look, ultimately God can do whatever He wants. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَمَا اقْتَتَلُوا وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ. In Surah Baqarah, had God wanted, they would not have fought. But God does what He wants. You know, there's that verse in Surah Baqarah. وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا اقْتَتَلُوا الَّذِينَ, those who came after. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَفْعَلُ مَا يَشَاءُ. Allah does what He wants. We don't even know.
So if I go with the perception, Shaykh, that Allah knows everything, but whatever I go through, or I see a fellow or my mother or my friends suffer, or even in extreme suffering, can I still say to myself, or is this way of thinking correct to say Allah knows, but we don't know the reasons behind all this, but Allah ultimately knows?
Yes,
So can
that's
we?
absolutely accurate. It's
Yeah, just
absolutely.
going back to the conversation you had
No,
about
no.
Allah knowing all, and then you said if He knows,
No, I said if Allah knows everything according to our simple minds, then why are we here? So we're saying there are two different levels at which we are talking. Can you see that? At one level, if you say Allah knows everything that's happening right now here, then we ask God a question. Yes, then why have you put us here? You already know I'm going to go to hell, God forbid. Then why have you put me here? I didn't ask you to create me. You created me. You told me it's a favor of yours, and you know I'm going to go to hell. What sort of a favor is this? That's a real problem. That question needs to be responded to. That's a real problem. Yeah? You see, look, majority of the 8 billion people are not happy. Religion says this world is a gift from God. Life is a gift from God. It's a blessing of God. Now, 8 billion people, majority of them are not happy. Even those people who do have an average lifestyle, they're suffering psychologically. It's not a good place to be in. As the Prophet said, this is a prison. It's not a good place to be in. Now, on top of that, you're going to have the prospect of death. Yeah, and then grave, and then standing before God, where children will become old people, where the people will say, Ya laytani kuntu turaba, if only I was dust. Where a person will say, throw my mother in that hell, and my father, and my brother, and my wife, and everybody. It's not a nice world. So we ask God, so you knew everything. You created me, and now I've got to face this? What sort of a merciful God are you? That's a real question, and that needs to be responded to. And that's what the lectures are geared towards. Yeah? We have to understand things from different perspectives in order to make sense of it. You see, a faithful will say, I believe in Allah. Well, that's fine. That's faith for you. A non-faithful person will say, I don't understand. It doesn't make sense. Can you see that? You see, faith is a good thing that carries us through, that I don't understand, but I know God understands. And all these logical problems that are created, He knows best. Can you see that? But majority of the people will say, this doesn't make sense. If I wasn't a religious person, I am saying, for example, if somebody says, a faithful says, if I wasn't a religious person and I wasn't within the lap of religion, and if I were to have faced Islam with the teachings of Islam, maybe I would not be wanting to be a Muslim or anything because it doesn't make sense. And that for me is very legitimate. Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you, Shaykh. I really appreciate it. I'm sure everybody really appreciates Shaykh's time and
Son,
effort. I know